So today we're continuing to work through Spinoza's deflationary account of the emotions in Book 3. Remember that he distinguishes between passive and active emotions, depending on whether or not our ideas about the causes of the emotions are adequate or inadequate, whether we have a true knowledge of the causes or just a fanciful account of what's going on. The book 3 is concerned exclusively with the passions. It's only later that he will begin to talk about the active emotions. So he's asking us to imagine a human mind that doesn't actually have the power of reason, such as the mind of a child, where the power has not yet developed. But it's not as if we acquire the use of reason once and for all, and then we never have to look back. The our ability to understand things, our power of activity, as he would put it, waxes and wanes depending on our circumstances. So if he is describing a state of nature here, it's not something that we emerge out of once and for all. It's something that we can easily fall back into, depending on whether or not we are overwhelmed by circumstances external to ourselves, which prevent us from exercising our power of mental activity, our power of understanding. So that's the main distinction to bear in mind: passive emotion versus active emotion. Of course, there's also another distinction between pleasurable emotions and painful emotions, and one of those distinctions cuts across the other. A pleasurable emotion is one in which we judge that our power of activity is increasing, and painful one in which we experience our power of activity to be decreasing. Eventually, he's going to say that all of our active emotions we experience as pleasurable. Passive emotions may be either pleasurable or painful, but that's for much later. So far, our account of the emotions, of the passions, could apply equally well to dogs and horses as to humans. It's only from this point onwards that Spinoza is going to start to give a specifically human account of the passions, and his starting point here is proposition 27. So today I'm just going to be talking about proposition 27 and its corollaries and consequences, and it concerns the human tendency to imitate the emotions of others and to try and cause others to imitate our emotions, and how both of those tendencies can, well, cause trouble if the mind is completely passive. So to be completely passive would mean that we only judge things by the effects that they have on us, on our bodies in particular. Spinoza uses the term order of nature to refer to the tendency to organize our ideas in that way, and he distinguishes that from the intellectual order, which is only accessible through the power of reason. And the intellectual order refers to the ability to trace true causal connection between things, and ultimately to see all things as following from the necessity of the divine nature. So we'll start off then with proposition 27. By the very fact that we conceive a thing which is like ourselves, that is to say, a person, and which we have not regarded with any emotion to be affected with any emotion, we are ourselves affected with a like emotion. So what he's saying is that we imitate the emotions of others. The argument that he offers in the proof doesn't really appeal to anything that has gone before, and I think this really just is an empirical fact which we can easily verify from our own experience. Um, he says here, from the fact of conceiving a thing like ourselves, another person, to be affected with any emotion, we are ourselves affected with a like emotion. And he adds something at this point that isn't in the statement of the proposition, but he's going to develop it later. If, however, we hate the said thing, like ourselves, the person having the emotion, we shall to that extent be affected by a contrary and not similar emotion. So if we see somebody that we hate experiencing pleasure, we ourselves will experience pain and so forth. This, he says in the Scholium, this imitation of emotions, when it is referred to pain, is called compassion. If you click on the link here, you see that he's referring back to the definition of pity that we saw last day. Pity is pain caused by the hurt that another experiences. And when this tendency to imitate is referred to desire, it is called emulation, nothing else but the desire of anything engendered in us by the fact that we conceive that others have the like desire. In other words, mimetic desire. Some of you may know the work of René Girard, who attempted to build a whole philosophical anthropology on this principle. He says that man is the creature who does not know what to desire, and he turns to others in order to make up his mind. We desire what others desire because we imitate their desires. So Spinoza will have a little to say about this, but he is more concerned with how this mimetic tendency manifests itself in the emotion of compassion. The corollary states that if we conceive of anyone whom we have hitherto regarded with no emotion, pleasurably affects something similar to ourselves, we shall be affected with love towards him. If, on the other hand, we conceive that he painfully affects such a person, we shall be affected with hatred towards him. So he refers here to Proposition 22, which we saw last day. Proposition 22 states basically the same thing. If we conceive that anything pleasurably affects some object of our love, we shall be affected with love towards that thing. And so forth. Contrariwise, if we conceive that it affects an object of our love painfully, we shall be affected with hatred towards it. So it's just a restatement of what we saw last day. Next corollary, we cannot hate a thing which we pity, which again is something we can verify from our own experience. I think the point is that if we pity somebody, we are commiserating with that person. We are sharing in that person's pain. If we were to hate that person, we would be adding to his pain insofar as we could. And since we're ourselves experiencing the pain, we're not going to do that. So, next corollary, we seek to free from misery as far as we can a thing which we pity. Okay? because that which painfully affects the object of our pity affects us with a similar pain, and we try to remove this source of suffering. So this will or appetite for doing good, which arises from pity, we call benevolence, and it is nothing else but desire arising from compassion. But be clear, compassion for Spinoza is not a virtue because it's something that we experience passively. I'm not quite sure what the history of ideas around this word compassion, how it has evolved over time. As far as I know, the Greeks or Romans could never have conceived of compassion as a virtue, and probably not the medievals either. We really need to come into the Enlightenment for the idea that compassion or pity could actually be construed as a virtue. For Rousseau, pity was a virtue. For Hume, the sentiments such as compassion are the foundation of morality. For Schopenhauer, given that the human lot is so miserable, the only ground for that he could imagine for constructing morality would be on the basis of compassion. But Spinoza does not regard compassion as a virtue because it's not an active emotion. And he's going to say in book 4 that for the person who is guided by reason, if you can imagine a person who is fully guided by reason, this type of passive emotion is bad and useless. Okay, anything that can be achieved through a passive emotion can also be achieved through an active emotion. On the other hand, he's all for benevolence, justice, piety, all of the institutions of religion, all of the political institutions that promote harmony among people, even if they are based on exploiting people's passive emotions, all of these things are for the good. But they don't apply to the small minority of people who are governed by the dictates of reason. But of course, none of us are governed by the dictates of reason, and we alternate between active and passive emotions depending on how our power of activity waxes or wanes over time. Okay, moving on. Proposition 28, this is also important. We endeavor to bring about whatsoever we conceive conduces to pleasure, but we endeavor to remove or destroy whatsoever we conceive to be truly repugnant thereto, or to conduce to pain. This is almost the same as Proposition 12 in Book 3, which states that the mind, as far as it can, endeavors to conceive those things which increase or help the power of activity in the body. Remember that this word conceive is doing duty for the Latin word imagination, which in Spinoza's usage can refer to real things as much as to fictitious things. It's to imagine something is to conjure up an image or an idea of something, regardless of whether that something is real or fictitious, whether or not it is capable of being realized. So the difference here between Proposition 28 and Proposition 12 is that whereas in Proposition 12, where he is merely referring to imagining or conceiving circumstances that increase our power of activity. Here he is saying that we endeavor to bring about these circumstances. So we're passing from imagination to action. And this illustrates how the emotion is of positive benefit to us. It's our ability that enables us to imagine alternative futures for ourselves, that enables us to plan actions and to, if you like, run simulations of different courses of action without actually having to fully engage in them before deciding what to do. So this is just an outgrowth of the conatus. We endeavor to bring about whatsoever we conceive to conduce to pleasure. The word conceive is appearing here again because our conceptions may be adequate or inadequate depending on how well developed our power of reason is. So there's nothing really new in Proposition 28, but he is spelling out here that we're passing from not merely imagining new circumstances for ourselves, but to acting to bring them about. So a particular instance of this is that we shall also endeavor to do whatsoever we conceive men to regard with pleasure, because we are imitating the emotions of other people. And contrariwise, we shall shrink from doing that which we conceive men to shrink from. Okay, so he's just citing Proposition 17 again, the one that we started off with today. So he gives the name ambition to the endeavor to do a thing or to leave it undone solely in order to please men, okay, under the impetus of this tendency to imitation. If that motivation to please others is absent, then he uses the word kindliness. So ambition he would see as a passive emotion. He says he gives the name praise to the pleasure which we conceive the action, with which we conceive the action of another, whereby he has endeavored to please us, and conversely blame to the pain wherewith we feel aversion to his action. So ambition, praise, and blame all arise out of this passive tendency to imitate the emotions of others. A consequence of this, if anyone has done something which he conceives as affecting other men pleasurably, he will be affected by pleasure, accompanied by the idea of himself as a cause. So, okay, again, he's citing Proposition 17. He who conceives that he affects others with pleasure or pain will, by that very fact, himself be affected by pleasure or pain. And because this emotion originates in his own action, okay, he will experience himself as the cause, and so will be affected by pleasure, accompanied by the idea of himself as a cause. So he uses the term honor to honor or glory, depending on the translation. It's pleasure accompanied by the idea of, well, it is obviously an internal cause, not an external cause. There appears to be a mistake in the original text. So honor is the pleasure we feel at our power of action in increasing the pleasure of others. And conversely, there is the emotion which we style shame. Um, Shame is obviously one of the primary ways in which we are socialized. For Spinoza, it's a passive emotion. It's bad or useless, unnecessary in the case of a person who is guided by reason. Um, So he says this refers to cases where pleasure or pain arises from a man's belief that he is being praised or blamed. Presumably, this pleasure or pain can arise without the praise or blame of others, and he uses the term self-complacency and repentance to refer to these emotions. Of course, these emotions can be based on simply imaginative fantasies. The pleasure wherewith a man conceives that he affects others may exist solely in his own imagination. And as everyone endeavors to conceive concerning himself that which he conceives will affect him with pleasure, it may easily come to pass that a vain man may be proud and may imagine that he is pleasing to all, when in reality he may be an annoyance to all. Again, we can see this from our own experience. Proposition 31 and 32 refer to mimetic desire. This is the desire that the passive desire that we have for things, which arises from our imitation of the desires that other people manifest. If we conceive that anyone loves, desires, or hates anything which we ourselves love, desire, or hate, we shall thereupon regard the thing in question with more steadfast love, and so forth. Okay, so the point here is that we love something, it causes us pleasure, we observe that other people love it too, we imitate their emotion so that we love it all the more. Okay, from the mere fact of conceiving that anyone loves anything, we shall ourselves love that thing on that account alone, but by hypothesis, we already love the thing, it already causes us pleasure, so it increases the emotion of pleasure. From the foregoing, and also from proposition 28, that's the second proposition today, the endeavor to manifest the circumstances that cause us pleasure. We endeavor as far as possible to cause others to love what he himself loves and to hate what he himself hates. So this endeavor to bring it about that our own likes and dislikes should meet with universal approval is really ambition, which we saw defined last day. And wherefore we see that everyone by nature desires that the rest of mankind should live according to his own individual disposition. And when such desire is equally present in all, everyone stands in everyone else's way, and in wishing to be loved or praised by all become mutually hateful. Okay, one more proposition for today. If we conceive that anyone takes delight in something which only one person can possess, we shall endeavor to bring it about that the man in question shall not gain possession thereof. Okay, so because this person takes delight in something, we too will take delight in it and desire to possess it. But we're assuming that it can be possessed by only one person, so we will try to prevent that other person from having possession of it. So here, Spinoza is anticipating the development in Book 4, the types of good to which this sort of consideration does not apply are things like knowledge and understanding, which can be shared equally among all, and that correspondingly is going to play a principal role in Spinoza's account of harmonious social relations among people who are governed by reason. So finally, we have a general scholium to this series of propositions about imitating emotions. We thus see that man's nature is generally so constituted that he takes pity on those who fare ill and envies those who fare well, with an amount of hatred proportional to his own love for the goods in their possession. Further, we see that from the same property of human nature, whence it follows that men are merciful, it follows that they are envious and ambitious. So he says that, well, these propositions can be verified by direct appeal to experience rather than his proofs. And he urges us to look to children as exemplars who he says laugh or cry simply because they see others laughing or crying. They desire forthwith to imitate whatever they see others doing and to possess themselves of whatever they conceive as delighting others. Okay, that's all for today. We'll move on next day to Spinoza's account of romantic love and sexual jealousy. And beyond that, to his account of how the passions of love and hatred play out in our social relations generally.